InDigital is on a mission to improve the 911 industry. Our goal is to create something better to go above and beyond the current standards. Our passion for creating the most advanced, well-designed solutions led to our position as an industry leader in next-gen core services. For the millions of calls processed over our emergency IP networks, to our Text for 911 solution, Texty, to our disaster recovery and backup solution, Mevo, it's easy to see we love what we do. For more information, check us out at www.indigital.net.
Rapid Deploy believes that every public safety agency, regardless of size, should have access to the data they need when it matters most. That's why since 2016, our mission has been to reduce emergency response times and improve public safety. We are the industry's only integrated emergency response platform. Our web-based cloud platform includes analytics, mapping, dispatch, and mobile apps, purpose-built for 911 in the 21st century. Visit www.rapiddeploy.com to learn how we enable effective, efficient, data-driven emergency response.
If Within the Trenches has ever taught you something, open your eyes to what it is like to be a 911 dispatcher, or has inspired you to become one, then help support us and join our Patreon. Get exclusive bonus content, one-of-a-kind swag, discounts on merchandise, ad-free early access to new episodes, and much more. To join, please visit patreon.com/WTT podcast. And if you're an industry partner, we have something for you as well. And now, for the show.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and this is going to be episode 340 of Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them. This episode is sponsored by InDigital as well as Rapid Deploy, and this episode is a Rapid Deploy exclusive. First off, I want to thank patrons, as always, for all the support and just everything. And I also have some announcements that'll be coming up that patrons will get first. So thank you so much, patrons, for everything. I appreciate it more than you know, as well as all those who listen and watch. Your support, thank you. And the sponsors. I wouldn't be able to do this without any of you. There is a lot that is going on, as always, and I am working on the Dare to Be Great conference. All the speakers have already been chosen. All of the sessions are in, and I will be announcing the speakers that are going to be up on the list for all of you, and more to come. So look out for that. Very excited about it. They're excited. We're ready to go. But again, it'll be October 6th through the 9th for Dare to Be Great 2. So make sure to look out for registration. That's going to be coming out here soon. Also, Imagine Listening will be on August 24th. That is a special private session that we'll be doing that if you end up telling a story, whether it be something, if you end up jumping on to tell a story on screen, you will end up getting one of these official I Am 911 challenge coins. I had put it out there for 100 participants. It ended up getting just completely taken out. They filled all the spots filled within hours. So I ended up opening up one more or 100 more spots. So if you want, you can check that out as well. Just go to the podcast page and you'll find the link for Imagine Listening for that virtual event on I Am 911 Day, August 24th, 2020. So my guest today is Myriam, and she is a public safety dispatch. I think I put it on here wrong. Public safety dispatch communications officer, telecommunicator. There's a bunch of different ways that you can say it with City of Berkeley and with PD and fire out of California.
Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going.
What title did I have for you?
It's a public safety dispatcher.
That was, so you know what I did when I put it in there, I put on the I put public safety dispatch. I was typing too fast and I didn't put the ER on there. So when I was looking at it again, I was like, what the hell did I type here?
Public safety dispatcher.
Yeah, public safety dispatcher. Others say, communications officer. It's all awesomeness, I think. The elite of the elite. That's right.
Appreciate that.
That's right. So I am excited to have you on here. We were talking a little bit earlier, and I want to learn more about you. I want to have the audience learn a lot more about you as well. You've been in the profession for about 5 years now, right?
7, including the other agency I worked for, but yes, about 5 with the city of Berkeley.
Awesome. So how did you get started in public safety to begin with? I mean, did you have, family or anything, or did you just kind of jump into it? A lot of people just happen to fall into the profession.
So I fell into the profession through my older brother. He is a police officer for the city of Napa. And during my senior year of high school, he and I met because I wanted to think about topics for a senior project. The high school that I go to, the last semester, you do a huge project where you put in community service hours. You write a whole basically thesis on the subject. You volunteer, and he and I were brainstorming on what kind of project could I do that will stick out for my senior project. And he said, hey, the JC offers a night class of dispatching. You should take that class. That'll be your hours. Have the director of the academy be your sponsor, and then write about dispatch. And then at the end of it, you'll get college credits and you'll get a dispatching certificate. So I was like, okay, that sounds pretty cool. Never thought I would ever use that certificate. I did the project, met amazing people. I was just doing it for a senior project. I was sitting along people who were getting ready to start at a new agency or wanted to dip their toes into dispatching, and took that class. I graduated high school, was going to move to LA and do film and photography. That didn't work out. My dad owns a furniture store in the city where I grew up in, and one of his customers was a St. Helena dispatcher and said, hey, we're hiring. I was 19 at the time, and I started as a per diem in 2013, and I was there for about a year and a half. And with the experience at that agency, I went to the city of Berkeley, and that's how I got into dispatching.
Nice. I don't know, other than myself. I'm trying to think. Like I said, this is episode 340, so I'm trying to think of every episode if there was something similar, but maybe there is. But either way, doing it that way, that's pretty cool. Like, let's go back a little bit with the project that you did. So you were doing sit-alongs, right? And what did
I was actually taking, so California requires dispatchers to do a post-academy certification to be a dispatcher. POST stands for, I believe, Peace Officer Safety Training. It's the same academy officers go to, and there's a dispatcher course. There's a 2-week program where if you're already part of an agency, they send you there so you can get certified, or there's the one where it's the semester-long night classes. They take more time with you, and it's for people who are aspiring dispatchers or me doing it for a senior project.
Oh, man, that's pretty awesome then. So what all did you put into that presentation? Like, did you have to go up in front of the class and present everything?
Yeah. So I had to have about 150 hours. I exceeded that because of the classroom time. It was 2 nights a week, 3.5 hours each. The academy director was my sponsor, so I would go to his office. He would just sign off on my paperwork. And then I wrote like a 15-page what it is to be a 911 dispatcher. And then the last week of high school is the senior project presentations, and I had to present it to different seniors. And it's about a 5-minute presentation. My English teacher is the one who grades the paper, and then I come up with a whole presentation on what it is to be a 911 dispatcher.
Damn.
Yeah.
Well done.
Thank you.
So what did they think? I mean, you know what? Actually, before that question, what did you think? What was your thought process? Because you've got a brother already who's in law enforcement. So,
Right.
I'm sure, you've got not only that influence, but, kind of some stories there and everything. But for you on the other side, what was that like for you learning about it that way?
So it was really interesting. There were some people that had been that graduated before me in that class that were wanting to be dispatchers for the city of Napa. So I met them. Their excitement and their drive for wanting to be a dispatcher was just so amazing. And I'm just there to do a project. And what I really wanted to take out of it, I wanted to do a project where nobody had ever done a senior project like this. And I was the first to go through a dispatching course. Not only did I come out with a project out of it, I was a post-certified dispatcher at, I think I just turned 18. I wasn't even 18 yet. So just that experience, I met many wonderful women who I still am in contact with today. That was back in 2011. Just hearing their stories, hearing where they went, what agencies they got picked up, and then learning, oh my God, you did end up becoming a dispatcher. It was amazing. Yeah.
That is awesome, man. I really think that's a first for the show. That is really cool. When I mentioned, other than me earlier, when I was in college, I ended up doing everything that I do right now, whether it be the I'm 911 movement, this podcast, any of that stuff. The concept for it started out as a college project where I showed them by just sharing stories what it was like on the other end. I was dispatching during the time, so I can definitely relate with you there. That is really cool. So you end up doing that, and you end up applying. When you get in there and you start taking calls and everything, I mean, what was the training like then? Because you already have some experience, you already have that certification and everything, but was it different at all from what you had already gone through and then jumping into it and starting to train?
Yeah, nothing prepares you for live dispatching than actually doing it. You can explain it to somebody and break it down, but once you're there and you have somebody on the other end and you're their lifeline, it is a different experience. Even from agency to agency. So the city of St. Helena, when I was working there, had a population of just 6,000 people. I was the only dispatcher for a 12-hour shift. I handled the radio, 911s, non-emergencies, and the front desk. So if people came in and I was on a 911, I had to look at them and say, hold on, I'm busy. I did live scans at that agency. So I had to run people, make sure they were good to go, and then let them in the building and do live scans. At the time, I was working when there was no female officers at St. Helena. So if they would bring in a female prisoner, who would do the searches? Me. So it was very different from the city of Berkeley. They definitely jump-started me into what it was going to be like for the city of Berkeley. And when I applied as a lateral. And when I got there, I didn't feel like a lateral. I felt like an entry-level dispatcher because it's a different pace. You're now from being in a one-room show by yourself for 12 hours. The next room over was the briefing room and officers were there, to bringing the radio with me to the bathroom. You know what I'm saying? It was very different, to a room of 6 to 8 dispatchers, different personalities, the whole nine. So then taking fire, because at St. Helena, I didn't do fire. I would transfer to county for that. So then learning fire was brand new for me as well with the city of Berkeley. So I'm sorry, what was your question again?
No, just really, how the difference is really on what it's
right,
like.
Yeah.
I'm in awe listening to you, because your story and my story is similar, where when I started out dispatching, I started out in Florida, and it was a small city PD, and it was me by myself. I was there for 8 hours though, but I did the same thing. I did all disciplines of public safety, and when it went to shit, it would go to shit, and it would get crazy there, and it's just me, and I'm
Right.
trying to, do what I got to do. But it was the same thing where I'd call over the radio and say, frost proof to 108. I'm going to be 10-7 down the hall. And they knew that that meant I was going to go use the bathroom, and
Right.
hopefully nothing's going on, but I've got a
Yeah.
portable, and if it does, I'm running back.
Yep. Right. I brought my notepad, a pencil, and the radio, made sure it was on, and that was it. So, and then I went, into a room with multiple dispatchers. You could let them know I'm going to go to the bathroom, and you could take your time. You don't have to take the radio with you.
Yeah.
It's a very different experience.
Yeah, well, of
And
course, because then you've got that dynamic of all of those different personalities.
right,
When
right,
I switched over, when I moved back home to Michigan, I was working in a room with sometimes up to 4 to 5 different people, depending on if it was busy or if it was on the weekend. Because we had
hmm
3 as our minimum, but then we had 4 on the weekend. But if there was something nuts going on, a big storm or whatever, we would have that 5th console. We would have somebody there that was the supervisor console. But otherwise, you're learning how to work with everyone and as
right,
a team. And
right,
for me, it went from the call volume being barely anything to now the calls are coming in and coming in and coming in. Sometimes there was a time where you could get a breather, but a lot of the times it was, you're busting ass taking calls, and
right.
you have to learn how to listen to the room. You have to learn how to communicate with the person who's on the main radio and just everything
Yeah,
that's going on.
right. Right. That's funny that you mentioned that, because room awareness is huge. And when people come and do sit-alongs, and I'll talk to them about what I do, what I'm doing, what position I'm working, I'm talking to them, I'm listening to what's going on across the room at the same time. I know exactly what they're talking about, and I'm having this conversation with a sit-along. I have, my web browsers up. They see us doing it, and we do it so effortlessly that they're like, oh, I got this. I'm going to be able to do this. This is easy. I have it in the bag. And then you have to do it. And then that skill level of multitasking it's not many people have it. Not many people have it, and it's learned. And when you do it, you either have it or you don't.
Right. Oh man.
Yeah.
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 Well, so then what was that like for you then when you made that transition from you being by yourself, coming in and having those,
hmm
5 to 6 other
hmm
dispatchers or call takers there with you? When you walk in and you see everyone doing it effortlessly, where were you at that moment? Because I know for me, I saw the same thing you described, and I thought, holy shit, am I going to be able to do this? Like
Right.
there's a lot going on here.
Right. And it was when I started training for the city of Berkeley. There was another girl training before me, and she was a little ahead of me, and she was a lateral from Oakland Police. And I finally caught up to her, I think between fire or records learning. And then we entered police training together. So at my agency, we work 4 positions. We work the fire desk, the police desk. We dedicate one day to call taking, and then what is records bureau. So warrants, entering vehicles into the stolen vehicle system, everything that involves, NCIC CLETs and LETs, all of that, right? So the goal is, you work 4 tens each day of your work week. You work one position. The police desk, you are dedicated to the police radio channel. The fire desk, you are dedicated to the firefighters, but you are also answering phone calls as a secondary. You're not primary on phones. Same with the records bureau position. And when you're a call taker, you're a call taker, and you answer the secondary radio channels if officers want to, request a tow or have a question about a call, the chitter chatter that they don't want on the main channel. So I caught up to her to where was the last phase, which is the police desk, the police radio. And we were training together. And, she's an Oakland lateral dispatcher, and people aren't familiar with Oakland, California. Things go down in Oakland, California. They're going to have, my heart goes to those dispatchers. And then there's me from St. Helena, California, which is in the Napa County. Population of 6,000. The worst call I would probably get was, unfortunately, a drunk driver because of the region that we're in, to gas leaf blowers. That was it, and then abandoned vehicles. So she's like really seasoned, and I'm just, technically by definition on paper a lateral, but not really a lateral. And then she failed out, and that really impacted me, because I was like, she is a Oakland lateral and she didn't make it. This is going to be like really hard for me. But when I was training, my training supervisor at the time said, listen, at her agency, they take one call at a time. Calls could be ringing and ringing and ringing, and that's their main focus. Whereas in Berkeley, you're on a 911 or you're on a 9 emergency, you need to triage calls, or you have priority traffic on the radio. That's the multitasking. She's like, even though you came from a smaller agency, you answer the phone, you work the radio, you work the front desk, you had those multitasking skills that she didn't have. And it kind of made me feel a little bit better, but still scared at the same time, because I still have to finish, the training program. But I made it. And I really have to thank a small agency for that, because even though the volume of calls, the type of calls were different, all the tasks that I had to do helped me with what I do now.
Damn. It's very true. It's all really in preparation, because like you were saying, you're by yourself, and for a long time, even
right.
Even though that, like you said, the call volume is low, when it does get up there, you're doing everything by yourself, and that prepared you. That's pretty awesome. And then so you get through, and how are you feeling after that time?
So I was 22 years old when I started the city of Berkeley. If I could do it all over again, I would have told 22-year-old Myriam, don't act like you know everything. Humble yourself. Shut up. Just stop talking. Don't say anything. Silence really is gold. And just listen. Just listen. The best thing to do is just listen. So if I could do it over, that's what I would tell 22-year-old me. Training was definitely different, agency to agency. It was, it was cutthroat. It was hard. It was humbling. It was stressful. There was days where I had to talk to my mom on the phone and say, Mommy, help me come out the car. I don't want to walk into the building. She had to walk, it was just that type of stress. And it wasn't the trainers. It wasn't, it was, what you were preparing yourself for. And, and as you know, Ricardo, you started in a time of dispatching where it was cutthroat. People didn't care to learn your name until you passed training. It was not a welcome to dispatch. It was, let's see how long you're going to make it.
Right. Like,
you're the percentage of people who are able to do this job is very low. So, I had people call me. So we rotate badge numbers. And there was this one OG dispatcher who called me by the girl who had my dispatcher's name. So she was calling me by the other dispatcher's name. I'm not going to learn your name until you pass training. Oh. That breed of dispatchers, and you know which ones I'm talking about. It's the culture of what it was like then. When they started, it was even worse. It was not what it is today. There was this saying that one of the dispatchers told me. She says, just remember this. You're going to need me before I ever need you.
Damn.
You're going to need my help before I ever need your help. So that's the humbling part. That's the, okay, you don't know everything. And, this is 22-year-old me just thinking I, know everything. At that time, when I started, and I was the only dispatcher for the city of Berkeley that spoke Spanish. For the longest time, they had to transfer people to the language line. And here I come, and they're so excited. That was probably the one thing they were excited about. Oh my God, we have a Spanish speaker. Myriam, we need you to pick up this line. So because of me speaking Spanish, I get a differential in pay, and it's 5%. So that was another nickname they gave me, 5%. Hey, 5%, I need you to take this call. I mean, it's little things like that, really set the tone of what it's like in a communication center.
Right.
So, yeah.
It's it's crazy to think, you're talking and I'm thinking back at how it was for me in the beginning, like, damn. Because it was, I think a lot of places are changing now, in the last
Yes.
4 years, things have changed. It's a new day, man. People are learning differently, and in ways where they're able to, I would say, keep more people, even though everywhere is short staffed, but in a way, training differently as well. They're able to keep people. But yeah, man, when I started out, I saw, and I had a great trainer when I first started out, and this was 2001, and he took that when I was there, that first shift, and it was a night shift. I watched him take a 911 call, and after that call, he's like, "It's your turn," and I'm like, "What?" There's nothing else.
Yeah.
That's how it went.
It is. It's it definitely is. It's really hard hiring people during these times because of the pandemic. But pandemic aside, the older generation, or the OGs that are still in dispatch, that haven't retired out, that still have a couple more years to go, millennials are what's coming in. Gen Z is what's coming in. So I took this whole class on, managing generations and what that's going to look like in law enforcement. And I'm a millennial, and we are the softer generation. We grew up during a time where when you were playing soccer, the losers got a trophy too for participating. It's a different way of thinking. Millennials love their time. Millennials love their family and friends. They love to travel, and what this, the generations before, it was, I need to buy a house, I have kids. Millennials aren't having kids right away. They're still living at home. Do I need to make $100K a year and be treated this way? Absolutely not. So they're falling out. We're not having a good retention program because of, and I'm not speaking for my agency, I'm just speaking as a whole for law enforcement.
Right.
And that's not just, dispatch. That's also in the officers and the corrections. All of who's being hired are millennials and Gen Z. And it was when I started dispatching with the city of Berkeley, because I had a big mouth and I was 22-year-old Myriam at the time, I was kind of a little outcasted. And during my breaks, I would go to the parking lot where the officers park their units, and there was a female officer around my age who was just starting too. To this day, she's my best friend, and we traveled the world together, and I became friends with the officers, which was then really unheard of. There was always this dispatch versus officers. It's you know what I'm talking about. It's they don't understand us. They think we're on YouTube all day. They think I'm picking on them by sending them to this call, whatever the case may be. And now you have me, who's friends with these people. I wasn't really talking to dispatchers or wanting to be their friends. I was out, on my break, I'd go outside and talk to the officers or talk to my friend who was the police officer. And, it was to the point where if the dispatcher wanted, the room wanted to pick up food somewhere, hey, Myriam, look to see which one of your boyfriends is available to go pick up the food for us. Like, that's who I was the girl who was friends with the officers to help them get food. So, that generation is changing. Officers and dispatchers are friends. They're,
Right.
becoming family. And that wasn't what it was like, not even 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah. And so I've been out of dispatch for 7 years now. And at least with my center, and I know other centers are different, so I'm not speaking for other centers or anything, but my center alone, we were like a family. Like we would invite the officers to the dispatch center for like Super Bowl or Thanksgiving. We would do our own dinners and stuff, and we would have them come around because there were officers that I had worked with for 2 or 3 years at the time, and we had never met. I'd only heard their voice. If I had seen them in the city somewhere, I would have never known who they were, and they wouldn't have known me unless I heard their voice or vice versa. So it was cool to bring them in and start getting to know each other, because having that trust over the radio is big. You're um a few episodes ago, I spoke to a gentleman named Ernie Stevens. He's an officer out of San Antonio, and he was talking about how, he loves his dispatchers and can credit them with him coming home safe, and having that type of relationship over the radio, between dispatch and officers and stuff. That is a good thing. You need that to be able to have that trust. Or if somebody ends up saying, when I heard your voice, I knew everything was going to be cool.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the goal. The goal is to be, the voice on the other end that brings the peace. And, I'm not there with them. I'm not there, when they're fighting somebody on the other end. And all I could say is, what's your status? We have people on the way. That's all I could say. I can't get jacked up on the radio, because then that's going to get them jacked up. And, I might have a little bias, my brother's in law enforcement, he just got promoted to sergeant. I love you, Omar. Congratulations. And, it's, to me and my best friend, she's a police officer, they're my family. And, even though they could be rude on the radio or snarky on the radio, it's, we're still a family. And we, to me, they have brothers and sisters and their parents, and, they, like everybody, deserve to come home. And I do take it personal, because I hope that the dispatchers at the agency where my brother's at, do the same for him.
Right.
So,
I think it's interesting because you talk about how, like the OGs and stuff kind of give you shit for hanging out and getting to know the officers a little more, but you're really bridging the gap. Really. You go in with a different mindset on how things, are working around there, which is always good to have.
right.
Not people don't ever like change, right? But change, it can be inevitable sometimes. It
Right.
can go that
Yeah.
way. And
Old practice. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Old practice.
When people have when they say, well, it's always been that way. Well,
Why?
it's time to change, right? So in a sense, you're starting to bridge the gap there slowly, meeting
Right.
up with the officer that's really good friends with you now, and then talking with the others. And slowly you start building these relationships. And this is where, where we come together, right? And
Right.
and it starts being a family. So, even though in the beginning you were enduring some of that stuff, it sounds like it ended up being a good thing because, again, you bridged that gap.
Right. Everything happens for a reason. And I probably wouldn't have been this way if that stuff didn't happen. But definitely, bridging the gap is huge. It really is. And just, remembering what the end of the day is and what the goal is at the end of the day, and, one of the things that I used to say when they would tell me that's the way it's done and that's the way it's always been done, old practice does not mean it's right practice. And, generations are coming that are not going to put up with this. They don't have to. They still live at home. They don't have a mortgage payment. They don't pay rent. They don't have a car note. Their dad and mom still have them on their phone plan. They're still, medically covered, what is it, the age 26 where you still have medical coverage under your parent in the state of California, that people aren't, working to, people are having families later, people are buying houses later. So it's a totally different mindset. What is interesting, though, that I learned with the managing generations in the class that I took with an instructor, she said, Generation Z is very like, and that's like the younger, they're younger than millennials. They're, I think, between 19 and 23 years old. And we are hiring them. They're coming, right? They're kind of like the baby boomers, but the generation before the baby boomers. And the generation before the baby boomers was the, generation that went through the Great Depression, who lost, everything, right? So what's the correlation with them and Gen Z? The fact that they grew up during the 2007, 2008 market crash and saw their parents lose their homes, saw their parents struggling. So they're a money-saving generation. They are, they're the ones who are going to be, the hustling ones in the industry because they don't want to suffer how their parents suffered.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the generation that's coming after millennials. Now you have them, the ones that want to travel and buy pets and enjoy time with their friends, to I saw my mom and dad lose everything. I don't want that to happen to me.
Man. And it's definitely a way to look at how to, again, as we're talking, continue with change, because we want to keep, we want, there is a point where hopefully we'll be able to say we're not dealing with any short staff issues. You want to change to be able to keep people in, because this is a career. It starts at the top, really, and how people are looking at what it is that you're doing. Some use it as a stepping stone, but even as a stepping stone, it ends up getting into their blood, and they end up staying in dispatch because
the money's good.
I definitely miss it.
Yeah, it has prepared me for a lot of things in life. The one thing that was the downside of starting young was the inexperience in life experience. It's very odd being a 22-year-old having to tell a parent, what to do with their child who's incorrigible or doesn't want to listen to them or doesn't want to go to school, or very, weird talking to couples who are fighting. And I'm not married, and at the time I didn't have a boyfriend. So how do I give them relationship advice over the phone? I've never been in a relationship. It's a very, it makes you grow up right away. You start problem solving from people. And that's why they call you. They call you because they have a problem and they don't know what to do with it. And some people, you talk to them on the worst day of their lives, and you have to live with that, and you have to be able to go home and know that you did what you were supposed to do and, gave them the result that they needed.
Yeah, exactly. And as you're talking about calls and stuff, do you remember like your first call or any early calls from either agency?
It's really a blur. I know it's only been 5 years with Berkeley, and then the total of 7, but I had to train myself not to carry these calls with me. There's days where I literally drive home in silence because I just don't want the noise. I don't want, the chitter chatter. You're constantly being fed with negative energy, negative information all the time, where you have to find a way to disconnect. Early calls at, the city of Berkeley. So when I was training, it's funny because you have what we call a 5150, a mentally ill person, who calls, and they're the regular callers, and they sound sane, so sane, and you're hearing the horror that they're telling you, and you're putting in the call, and my trainer's laughing in the corner, and I'm like, is he laughing? Am I doing this wrong? They're like, that's not really happening. That's so and so. They talk about things, nonsense all the time. Just, make sure they're okay. This is the regular, what they do, what they call about. For me, calls that stick out, I hate scary movies. I hate gore. Anybody that knows me, anything that has to do with nails, eyeballs, any of that stuff triggers me. Things that really stick to me are the calls that, people, telling me that there's a person, wanting to hurt themselves on the street, that are literally with a, screwdriver stabbing themselves in the neck with their chin, and I don't mean to get gory. I don't know if we're allowed to get gory on the show, are we? Okay. And I'm like, and she's in an office building. She's like, there's this guy stabbing himself in the neck. And then she starts to cry. And I said, why are you crying? Is everything okay? And she says, his chin is flapping. I'm like, oh no. Like, at this point, I'm just like, take a deep breath. I know this grosses you out, and but she needs you to help this guy. So we're taking that call. That's one. I have the one where you have a guy with a box cutter walking in the middle of the street, also hurting themselves, slicing their neck. An officer gets on scene and literally has to hold their neck in place to stop from bleeding. I have the old lady who went home, just got home from grocery shopping and didn't notice that her husband of 90 years old is sitting in his chair and had died in the last couple hours. She was so busy in the house herself that when she went to go check on him, he was already gone. Having to hear her explain that to me. One call that kind of bothered me a little bit was there was this gal who called from out of state, and she wanted us to do a welfare check on her uncle who was elderly in his 80s. And she said, we're in the process of moving there. He's my only family. We're moving there to be closer to him. And he hasn't answered in the last 2 weeks. And this is not him. It's to the point where he has such a routine schedule. He goes to the same coffee shop, takes the same class at the YMCA. I called the YMCA, I called the coffee shop, and they also haven't seen him in 2 weeks, and he's not answering his phone. So, okay, we'll go do a welfare check on him and have an officer contact him at the house. This is the description of his car, all that information. And his name, when I took his name, when you take a person that people want you to do a welfare check, you take their name and their phone number, because then you're going to try to call them. What if they're mad at their family and she's not telling me that they got in a fight and he doesn't want to hear from her? So you gotta, take everything they say with a grain of salt. So I remember getting his name and I remember getting his number, and I was looking at his name, and it was a very unique spelling of a name. It was very unique. Take the information, and I said, I'll have an officer call you when we get results on your uncle. I disconnect with her. I put it in the call for service. About 30 minutes later, a 911 call rang, and I answer it. I happen to get it. And when a 911 comes, I want to make sure if it's a wireless or if it's a landline. And it was a landline. And it was that guy's name. It was his name and the phone number and his address. And I remember I had called and nobody answered at the time. So I was like, oh, he's calling me back. So 911, how can I help you? What's the address of your emergency? She gives me the address, and it's a female. I was like, hello? She's like, my friend, he's dead. And I said, who are you? And she's like, I'm his ex-girlfriend. She's also in her 80s. I haven't seen him in 2 weeks. His niece called me, and I came to do a check on him, and I still have a key to his house. And it looks like he was taking a shower, and he had passed out or slipped, hit his head on the sink, and was laying there. He was laying there for 2 weeks. Didn't have access to a phone, didn't have nothing. And I tell her, don't call the niece. But that was already too late, because now she has the niece on her cell phone on speaker, letting her know everything, just saying, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I should have come earlier. And just hearing that niece's cry, because that was her only family. She was going to move from out of state to be close to him. Mm-hmm. And that was the result of that. So that's just one example of calls that aren't really that bad, but because there's other ones for sure. But those are the ones, that you did everything you could.
Right. Yeah. And that's the hard part, isn't it? When there's family members that are involved like that, because I'll give you an example here to to go along with what you're saying in relation. I had taken a call where this guy, he was going through a divorce, but he was checking on his soon to be ex-wife, and she had sent him some text messages that were like she was suicidal. So he went to check on her, and she had killed herself. He found her, and he wanted me to call her daughter. So, and I remember someone asking me, I think this was I had posted, I wrote about it, and someone had commented saying, why wouldn't you tell the person what happened on the phone? Why did you have to lie, um and tell them something else? Because I didn't tell her what happened. um and I had told the person, I didn't tell the daughter what happened because then she will be in a panic trying to get to her dad, and this could cause an accident, and she could end up getting killed herself. You don't want to create more victims. So instead of telling her exactly what happened, I just told her, you need to make contact with your dad. He needs you at the house. There's an issue that's going on there. And I told her to be safe. And then once I told the person that, who had commented, they understood, but they're like, why did you have to say something else? Why didn't you just tell her the truth? I'm like, because I don't want that person to end up getting killed themselves trying to get to their family. And so then, like with you, that's where I say it's an interesting dynamic, right? Because
Yeah.
you've got the person who called for the welfare check, and then you get the other call that's from the same place that you were trying to call yourself, right? And then just think, if that person would have been down the road, you would had to have done the same thing, right?
Right, right. It reminds me of a call. It was one of the first calls that I took, that in St. Helena. There was a gal. She called and said, "Hey, my husband, he is paragliding in Mount St. Helena, and he is not answering his phone, and he just sent me an SOS." And it's so funny that she was like, "And I'm running a race in Berkeley, so I'm on my way from Berkeley." Isn't that crazy how serendipity that was?
Mhm.
But anyways, she's like, "I'm on my way from Berkeley to St. Helena." I said, "Okay, ma'am. What's your husband's name? What's going on?" There was a rescue team going to him, and it looks like he had pressed the beacon on his emergency, whatever equipment he had, and he crashed into the mountain and didn't make it. And she called me back and she said, "Any word on my husband?" And here I have the information. I know he's dead. And I
Mhm.
have to, play along like, we're still looking for him. Make your way over here. This where the command post is for where they're going to find him and where they're looking for him. And she has no clue the information she's about to get. And it's really hard knowing, it's kind of like you're like a little secret squirrel, and you're trying to preserve any form, any innocence they have still, or any peace that they still have, because you don't want to ruin it for them just yet, because it's gonna, their life is about to change, and you don't want to keep it normal for them a little longer.
Right. Yeah, ugh, that just gave me goosebumps, man. That the call that I told you about happened the last 2 weeks that I was in dispatch. I remember I was sitting at phones, and when I got off the phone, I sat there and I thought, "What the fuck?" I was thinking, "Okay, the dispatch gods right now are like seem to be giving me every shit call imaginable to say, hey, we're kicking your ass on the way out." But
Right.
but yeah, that's the same thing. You've got that information, and afterwards, like for me at least, afterwards I just thought, man, like that kind of disturbed me a little bit, that I've got that information, but she's going to find out anyway. I'd rather her get there safe and sound than have to send out for an unknown accident that ends up being her, because I said, hey, your dad found your mom. How horrible is that? I'd rather the
Yeah.
person get there safe.
Right. Right. Yeah, most definitely. Keep their life a little normal as long as you can.
Yeah, exactly. And it's weird as we're talking about this, there are some people out there that think that, dispatch just answers the phone and sends out help. There's a lot more to it.
It is very, very complex.
Mhm.
Very complex. Yeah.
Now, you're talking that the last story you're talking about, it makes me think about, different locations and also, kind of making your job easier and all. When I was dispatching, you know, we had our CAD system. It was computer aided dispatch is what CAD stands for, and it's basically the system that we type everything in. Now, this one that we used, it was buggy. It had some issues. There were different things that happened with it, but it's what we use to get everything out there. Now, to make your job easier, in all aspects, from what it sounds like, you've got a new, system that you guys are going to be implementing here. What all? How does that work? Well, you and I were talking about it a little bit in the beginning before we started this episode, and the way you explained it just really, what I want is for those who are listening to really get what it is that you're saying. So if you can kind of paint a picture of what it is that you guys are going to be using.
Yeah. So just like generations are coming in and changing the dynamic of law enforcement, we are also moving with the new age of today. And Next Gen 911 is the world we are entering into. And part of Next Gen 911 is this program called Rapid Deploy. Through Rapid Deploy, it's a software integrated through your phone system and your console where you're working at. It talks to your CAD system, it talks to your phone system that you're working, and helps you pinpoint where a caller is calling from. Are you still able to hear me? It's going. My thing is going out. Are you still able?
Yeah, I can still hear you just fine.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah,
this one just went out. Okay.
yeah. Okay.
So, um, Rapid Deploy is again a Next Gen 911 program that is going to help us pinpoint people in a way where we're going to know where they're standing, what room they're standing in, what floor they're on, and the address. And it's going to be very accurate. Text to 911 is coming. People are already texting agencies their emergencies, and that's going to be, I believe, through Rapid Deploy as well. So right now, when we get a phone call, and if we don't have this system, it basically is the old way. You have this wireless tower, and it hits here, and then there's like, if somebody's GPS is on, it'll kind of give you a meter of where they're at. Rapid Deploy tells you what address they're at, and it follows the caller. It gives you like little bread, like cookie crumbs on the map, and shows you where they're at. So it shows you where they thought they were the moment the call started, and as the phone call progresses and the GPS gets more accurate through the phone, it pinpoints which address they're standing in or in. It's going to be, like I told you before, so accurate that they're going to know what building they're in, what floor they're on, and what room on that floor they're on. When we were testing it out, I called. You could text people through it, so I sent my boyfriend a text message and said, "Hey, we're going to be testing something. Just click on the link, and it's going to open your GPS." I said, "Hey, are you standing in the kitchen in the house?" And he was like, "Yeah." And it dropped a pin, not only on the address, but on the part of the house where it thinks that the GPS is, where it's at.
Mhm.
And it happened to be right in the kitchen.
Man, that is not only awesome technology, but it's also kind of scary.
It is.
A
After
little
that,
bit.
I kind of explained that to him. He's like, "I'm shutting down my GPS. I don't want to deal with this." So,
Oh, that's funny. But it definitely helps because I remember back in dispatch, and still this is like 2012, 2011. It's not that long ago, but we didn't have this type of accuracy in the center. And I remember one call specifically, and still do this now. Even with new technology, you still have to think outside the box and all, right? But I remember taking this call for someone who got lost in our state park that we had, and they're they're out there, and I'm trying to ping them somehow through, the cell phone providers, and you can't really get a good location on them. So I'm on the phone with them. I'm like, okay. And it was getting kind of dark already. It was in the evening. So I had to tell the officers, turn your lights on, throw your, siren or whichever. And then I would, I'm talking to the person, I'm saying, okay, do you see the lights? I think I see the lights. Nope, that's something else. Like, okay, well, they've got their lights on. Do you hear the siren? I do hear the siren. Okay, walk towards where you think the sound is coming from, and you'd have to do it that way. But new technology like this is always good to be able to find someone to get, to cut down on the response time, all of that. So, I mean, that's
Yeah.
got to be exciting.
It is very exciting, especially when you have like little kids calling and, when you have to think outside the box and a little 5-year-old is calling 911 because they want to report an emergency. And you ask them, what's your address? I don't know. You have to think outside the box. Okay, is there mail anywhere? Is there mail anywhere in the house? Yeah, there is. Okay, can you read? No. Can you spell? Yeah. Okay, tell me the numbers and then spell out the word. And those minutes, those seconds of not having to rely on this little 5-year-old who's doing the best they can to help you help them. You have a system like Rapid Deploy that's just going to be able to do it in seconds.
Yeah, and so with along the same lines is taking calls from kids. Also, if they're playing with the phone and you're and
Oh
you're
yeah,
and you're trying to find them, man, for those who are watching and listening, if
we
you
know where you are.
yeah, know where you are for one, but if you give one of your kids a phone that doesn't have service and still has a battery in it, they can still call
Right,
911. Uh,
right,
it'll still work. So just remember that because those sometimes are the best calls because they can be funny, but they're also the worst calls because every phone call that comes in, you have to take it as a priority one. It's
right.
everything is real, no matter what, until you finally get to the end and you get the result because it could be that one time that someone doesn't take it seriously that's the one that ends up on the news.
Yeah. When in doubt, send them out all
Exactly.
the time. Yeah.
Exactly.
That it's those wirelesses that sound like pocket dials. I was gonna disconnect on one of them, and I was like, something God was speaking to me and said, stay on a little longer because it
Mhm.
doesn't sound like a pocket dial, but it kind of sounds like something else. And and I'm doing as I'm like, hello, is anybody there? Simultaneously, I'm running the address, I'm running the phone number, seeing if there's any addresses associated to it. I noticed that the address associated to that phone number, there's a lot of medicals there. So I'm like, hold on, hello. And all I hear is this soft moan. And it was like, are you okay? And a soft no. And I said, officers there really quickly. I said, hey, sounds like they're having a medical emergency. I start stage fire for them. And I have an officer go and take the door down, whatever the firefighters need. And somebody's having a stroke. And, that little of, you have to really pay attention. And what sounds like a pocket dial may not be a pocket dial. So it's all those little things, and kind of like triggered me like, oh my God, this could have just been a pocket dial. That I could have just been like, somebody just playing with the phone. They didn't even realize they butt dialed me. But yeah, those are real.
Exactly. Yeah. Being aware of not only the room and everyone you're working with, those on the road, but especially on the phone, listening in that room when wherever the person is calling from, listening to everything that's going on. It could be just like that soft little moan or a noise or something that you're like, no, let's stay on a little bit longer
Yeah,
because it sounds like something is going on. Oh
right.
man, yeah. As so this has been awesome talking to you. I see
Thank
a
you.
lot of my story in yours. How are you talking about in the beginning? It's so good to talk and learn so much, about you and everything that you're doing. the way you're talking and all, I have to ask before I get to the closing question, but do you ever see yourself moving up, like, a trainer or a supervisor or anything like that?
As of now, those aren't my goals.
Mhm.
My goal right now um, is so I work with an officer at the agency I work with, and he is the tech guru of the officers. He helps with their mobiles and their record management system where they could find cases. So I kind of
Oh, the it cut out. You'll have to switch it on your laptop.
right there.
There you
Hi,
go.
I'm back. Okay.
Hey.
So, you know, when those dispatchers that I started with, the OGs, when they said, you're going to need me before I ever need you, kind of ironic now because I put myself in a position where I started networking with those officers that they didn't like to talk to. And I got really close with another officer who I highly respect, and he is the tech guru of the officers. He helps them with their mobiles, their record management. He teaches new officers how to write a police report, how to look up reports, anything. We just got work cell phones issued. He does all of that, all the programs, anything that has to do with police and tech. He's the man, right? So when we were building our new CAD system, I wanted to be a part of the build team, and I, started networking with him because he was part of, the upgrade, because we were going to upgrade mobile and all the other programs we use. And I know how to, I'm to the point where I'm training police officers how to use the system they work on, and I'm a dispatcher. So I help him with the training of officers when it comes to records management and mobile. Still not good at writing reports because that's not something I have to do with my day-to-day duties. But the fact that he trusts me in teaching brand new officers how to do that, I kind of created my own little gig with him. So my goal is to know how all systems work harmoniously, not just know what dispatch is, because that's going to help me knowing how an officer takes a call or how that call is, created, or that incident morphs into a case. Those are the things that make my, wheels start turning. It sounds very supervisory and like I'm hopefully going to move up, but I want to be super educated when I do make that transition. I want to know how A goes to B and B transforms into C. Whereas right now, everybody just knows A. So those people that used to say, hey, you're going to need me before I ever need you, it just flipped.
Nice.
So hopefully we'll see. Right now, my goal is to be the best I can be.
That is like, ooh, I hear myself off of yours. I think.
Hold on. Let me put your volume down.
Okay.
Okay.
Can you hear me okay? Okay, cool. You can hear me or no?
I can hear you.
Oh, okay. I think that's excellent. Moving the way you're moving, you already know, you know everything there is to know within the dispatch center, and you want to get the tech side as well. And that is just helping everyone that is going to be coming in. Again, you're bridging the gap there, which is very noble. And going into the wrap up of this episode, and this kind of ties in with this last question as well, is any advice on either to the OGs or anyone coming in, how do we deal with this? How do we really bridge the gap of the different generations that are coming in to this industry that obviously that we both love? How do people do this?
Overall, we're human. We have to remember we're human. We're gonna make mistakes. Know that those mistakes, all the things that I want to tell the 22-year-old me not to do, helped me become who I am today. And embrace those mistakes and just learn to grow from them. This helped me grow. And at 25, I bought my first house. Did I have to? No, but I did. Now I'm really stuck. I'm just kidding. But no, it's just people don't need that job. These generations don't need that job, and we have to help them understand, it's not about, the paycheck. It's about enjoying what you do. Right. And that's what people want to, we want those people. We want those people that don't care about the money, aren't there for the overtime, but are there because they want to make a difference. And making a difference is starting in the communication center by being kind, being respectful, being welcoming to people, because it's happening. It's happening. It's already being done. It is okay. It is a softer generation, but because of that, we're going to be able to retain people.
That's excellent. Thank you again for being on. This has been an excellent time learning about you, just the way you think and everything towards the industry and all. And yeah, I'm right there with you. It's a new day, and this has been good. So thank you again for being on this episode, and I'll be right back with you here. For those who are watching and listening, if you have any comments, questions, or you want to be a guest on the show, you can email us, and that's going to be wttpodcast@gmail.com. Once again, it's wttpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter. That is @91podcast. You can like us on Facebook. That's facebook.com/Within the Trenches podcast. This episode has been sponsored by InDigital as well as Rapid Deploy. And the show will always be free. However, if you were looking for any bonus content, any behind the scenes series that I'm doing, the singing badly in my car, those videos, discounts to the store, t-shirts, swag, anything like that, early release episodes, ad free, you can check us out on patreon.com/WTT podcast. And I can't thank patrons enough for everything. I wouldn't be able to do everything that I do now if it wasn't for all of you, those who watch, listen, your support, and of course the sponsors. So thank you very much. This broadcast can be seen on Facebook as well as YouTube. And for the audio portion of this, you can listen 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone.